Tell me about yourself.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, thanks for inviting me to take part in this conversation. I'm Dave from the UK. 2017, I was diagnosed with a rare disease called Cowden Syndrome. This is a condition that carries an increased risk of getting certain cancers, autism, developmental delays, and growths. I got my diagnosis because my mother had the same condition. She had a diagnosis about, I don't know, 10, 11 years ago. About a year before she passed away, she was like, I've got this letter here to give to the doctors if you want to get tested. I was like, oh, okay, yeah, thanks, Mum. I didn't know how to handle that because at the time I was feeling okay.
How old are you now, and how old were you then when you were introduced to this?
Now I'm 49. So I was probably about 41 when my mum
Okay.
gave me this, but also a sense of denial about her declining health. In fact, from my point of view, but as she got older, she passed away in her 50s. As she got older, her condition got worse. It wasn't after she passed away that I thought, yeah, I'm going to get tested. So about a year later, I was found I had the same condition. And I think at that moment in time, not long after my mother had gone, it was like, what do I do? What's going to happen to me? And how do I manage this? I think before that, I kind of been a kind of guy who could provide work, going out as much as I can. And now you're kind of almost feeling alone with this diagnosis. So anyway, I kind of connected with groups for my rare condition. But what I became quickly aware of was like amazing female advocates, whether that be patients or caregivers. But there seemed to be hardly any guys raising awareness about their rare disease. A conversation I had with men were like that there were men suffering in silence, unable to speak about what they were going through, fear of stigma, shame, not being heard. I think charities were doing all they could to help my rare disease community, but I was kind of like, well, where's my space in all this? I wanted to do something, but what could I do that no one else was doing? So in 2020, I set up a men's support group virtually on Zoom. It was open to all male patients, caregivers around the world. I kind of felt no one should feel alone and isolated in this condition. People in Africa and the Far East, you want them to attend if they're able to attend. Since then, we've been having meetings every month. Now it's twice a month. Despite the different countries, cultures, and social classes, guys coming together and finding we have more in common over the mental health, emotional side of a rare condition. It's a safe space to talk about what we're going through. We can share our experiences, seek support if needed.
Are most of the people in your group who join these meetings, are they men with rare diseases themselves, or are some of them just caregivers or not related at all to rare diseases?
My criteria is it has to be, I mean, it's always had to be a rare disease, but that's whether you're a male patient or a caregiver, because there's been this kind of argument before, well, kind of not an argument, kind of discussion around it before, but it's for people that don't have that pool of resources, the lack of awareness. We could invite people who have kind of like Crohn's disease or guys who have Crohn's or other more common conditions. But it's for those guys who don't have that awareness, don't have that support, and kind of living alone, are isolated with it. So it's also a mixture. I'd say
Mhm.
mixture of patients and caregivers, but actually kind of an extra one I would say is some of us who have a rare disease but have children as well. It's a different thing as well. For some of us, managing our health whilst being a parent is something that kind of is their own challenges. One guy in particular, he can't physically do stuff with his young kids anymore. And that kind of impacts his mental health, obviously. So there's patients, caregivers, but yes, some of us dads as well.
I don't know how many different men have been part of these conversations you've had, but I'm curious to know if there's big cultural differences that lead people to be more open than not, to be more observers than active participants in these conversations, whether it's from different countries or whether religious faiths. Curious to see what you've seen for men in these conversations.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'd say, yeah, there are some cultural differences. I think some of the guys from the USA talk about American football, and it's not that I dislike it. I'm just not confident about it. I don't really know as much about it, and I think that helps when you have. But I would say those differences are kind of mild comparison to that shared connection of talking about your experiences with family, doctors, relationships, or working with a rare disease or not. We have more in common than what divides us. Or our differences are.
I'll tell you one thing that I've learned. I haven't been part of these group discussions, but after my son got diagnosed with Cowden syndrome, I did start regularly seeing a therapist. I bounced around to different therapists, a couple male therapists, and it happens to work out that my female therapist, who I currently have, is somebody that I've really clicked with and learned a lot from. But I've learned from myself, one thing that has kept me from talking about my woe is me story and other trials and tribulations of my life has been this shame where I unfairly treat myself in a way where I kind of compare myself against others, and it creates a layer of shame that I just don't want to talk about things. But now, as I've learned to remove those layers of shame, I feel a lot more free. I feel a lot more open about talking about this stuff. What are some other topics that have been helpful and where you see, people need more help?
I think topics have been helpful have been from a patient perspective, finding a partner for men who have a rare disease. I never had conversations with men like that before. I remember one of the guy was talking about dating, how as soon as he shows the scars on his body with a potential partner, how that puts off people, or conversations about the rare disease. It's uncomfortable, and perhaps it scares some people. Talking about being a rare dad and struggles around constantly being able, the importance of supporting your child, um, managing it all, as well as taking care of yourself. And how one of the guys was talking about he had a rare disease child, and how there was a night planned out for him and his wife. They were too exhausted by the time it came to that, and they just ended up staying in until. I think as well, I would kind of say it gives the guys a space to talk about how it impacts your life without that fear of judgment or shame that you would perhaps get in the wider community due to that lack of awareness or
Mhm.
lack of understanding. What topics could be better? I think what perhaps we could talk about how it impacts the wider family. I think that's an issue. Dads that have rare children, I think that's something that isn't talked about enough. Lack of support within the wider family can be isolating for rare dads. It's like even someone said to me yesterday, "Yeah, you look well, but you're not. You're going through things that people can't see." And that was like, yeah, something like how managing your appointments alongside working, which is a good thing in a way, but in another way, it comes with its own set of problems. So, regards to the shame, what I would do is I don't force people to. It's not a share or die event. You can share whatever you're comfortable with. And I think for some people, they're more open than others. What I've noticed is a few guys, they've been there since the beginning, and they were like not comfortable with sharing at first. But as time's gone on, they're two of the biggest sharers in the group. So I think that depends on the person, but it's facilitated through all of what's comfortable for you.
Yeah, and I think there's tremendous mental health benefits just from finding the courage to talk about your life with other people. That for me was a very liberating feeling. I want to continue to build on those skills that I'm learning from therapy to also help share them and learn together as a group. Sanfilippo world of parents, mothers are very out there in the advocacy space. They also connect more, they get together in person more. So they have that bond and talk about the scary subjects more than the men do. I would love to find some way or a forum, and maybe you have some suggestions. Say if I brought in two or three other Sanfilippo dads and we tried to help mold and create a conversation or even an offshoot group where we're doing these regular talks as well. Share some of your thoughts on that.
Firstly, I think it's an important and great idea to have something for the dads. As my group, one option, if I'm being honest, and I'm not trying to do a disservice to my group, I do think sometimes rare disease specific group is needed
Mhm.
because only you guys know exactly what it's like of it day to day. So it's important as well.
Somebody new joins a group, say, or joins your conversations, how do you guys bring them in, introduce them, and get them comfortable with the conversation?
Always at the start of the meeting is get everyone to introduce themselves. That's normally up to a minute. Hi, I'm a rare disease dad. I'm from the USA. That's fine. But if you want to talk a bit more, that's fine as well. So then we would kind of like have an open discussion meeting or a speaker, but we could either, after the speaker's finished, we could either have some thoughts, feelings about what the speaker said. Well, if there isn't any, that's fine. We could go to kind of discussion anyway. How has everyone been? How's your month? Think it's kind of like it depends on who turns up, but it's kind of like you would go with some questions, thoughts that you want the people to discuss, or if the
Mhm.
conversation's flowing naturally, it'd be like someone else would be talking and another person, and then you would bring someone else into the conversation. I think it's important for everyone to share something to the level that they're comfortable at. Some people are all talkers, that's fine, but yeah, giving everyone that space to share should they want to. And I think most guys who have attended have wanted to share something.
Mhm. Yeah. Maybe if I can help, then get familiar with this and bring others into the conversation. And if you know, offshoot conversation or something where we bring these new voices into the mix, that'd be great. I do think it'd be cool maybe if we do something where after I get comfortable, I'll bring some other guys and we all start together in a way, you know what I mean? Well, it's like you're holding the hand, be like, hey, let's do this together.
Yeah. That's a good point and a good idea as well. Yeah,
Yeah.
sometimes, yeah, doing stuff together helps. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, cool. That's an idea I have in mind. First, I think it would be helpful for me to get my voice into the conversation and get comfortable too. Tell me a little about some of the speakers that you have found to be effective and the group has enjoyed hearing from, and what your thoughts are going forward with bringing speakers into your group to add some level of expertise.
Speakers are all connected to the rare disease community and they're guys from around the world. So they've been effective by bringing a different perspective to the discussion. And they've encourages, they're being open, they're being vulnerable. So encourages other guys to do the same. So I think, so we got a guy from Macedonia this Sunday, and he's great. Then next month, the last Sunday of the month, got a guy from India. Ended before as a participant. I don't know him as well, but he's going to be great as well. And it brings in that kind of thing. We'll be different countries, different cultures, but we have more in common over this kind of mental health side of being impacted by a rare disease. And I think there are things that we can learn from other guys. And that kind of thing of being alone with this, well, it doesn't have to be that way. Whilst we're not, standing in your shoes to say we're kind of not completely alone as well.
Yeah, the whole world really changed from COVID because
Yeah.
everybody now has access to Zoom. Just having that video component, you can really truly connect with men from all over the world. And that's a real cool resource and ability we didn't really have or hadn't really thought about like 5 years
Yeah.
ago. Prior to the COVID era, where it was these Zoom calls that we have access to, how did you address your own mental health? Did you go to physical in-person meetings? Have you had a therapist? Do you have a therapist now?
I have had a therapist. I found her like really helpful actually. I don't at the moment because of getting therapy in the UK is hard. Before COVID, I attended for my rare disease organisation in the UK. I attended a couple of their meetings. I attended a symposium in the USA. You know what? They are really great. They're really, really important. But for me, they were kind of lacking something in the sense of the presence of the men or the support for the men wasn't there, if I'm being honest. I felt that was lacking. I felt it was an unmet need. You know what? I'm happy at doing. This is where I'm at doing Zoom meetings because I find it more beneficial, not just for
Mhm.
the other guys, for me.
That's what I've found launching the Sanfilippo project is just how much I've been able to learn just by talking to people and picking their brains, dumbing down the conversation to fit my level of knowledge versus reading or hearing random videos. Very selfishly speaking, it's a very powerful tool resource for gathering a lot of information in an efficient way. And that includes teaching yourself how to cope with bad thoughts in your head and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's like as well, my podcasts as well, I think are really beneficial, like rare disease ones. I don't know if
Totally.
you've heard of Once Upon a Gene, Effie Parks.
I have actually, and I've listened to that.
Sometimes I think for a number of reasons, the support isn't there within your own community. But Effie seems to kind of have this ability. She's like a storyteller. She gives people the voice. And another one I like to recommend is two disabled dudes, Kyle and Sean. God, they're incredible. They made a film called The Ataxian, and I know they're incredible guys. Their attitude, their mindset, despite living with a rare disease called ataxia. God, yeah, that film is. I could watch that film again and again because it's so inspiring that they've made. So those two I would recommend. I recommend another one. He's a rare disease dad. He has a podcast called The Rare Hour, and Chris is a great guy. I've met him once. I went
Yeah,
to Global Genes, and I consider him a friend as well. So it's great to kind of have that connection. Which, yeah, without that
absolutely.
connection,
Yeah, I think there's a lot of power in networking across the rare disease
yeah,
world just because the similarities are so big across so many
yeah,
diseases, and you just learn new tools from people who are going through the same stuff. Another thing I'll try to do and down the line is figure out a way to incorporate some of the lessons of soccer into like the rare disease advocacy, the whole idea of kind of like passing the ball around, acting as a team,
yeah,
all for one for all kind of thing. I would have to figure out how to conceptualize it the right way, but I think like that's my community around here, and I haven't really been able to tap into them yet, and they're all itching to help with this whole thing for my son.
yeah,
I would love to kind of try to connect with somebody who can help me think that through. How do I get the soccer people to host some big event or something or raise awareness? And but that's something I'm going to be thinking about. And I know you guys have in Europe, soccer's a lot bigger than in America. So I'm open to those kind of ideas. Just keep that in mind.
and that's interesting you say that because we do it for Rare Disease Day, kind of like come together, don't we? But I think, it'd be good if we can continue that feeling, that vibe, that action throughout the year more.
Yeah. Yeah. Who knows? I just love the whole idea of a pickup soccer game in some kind of Zoom format where it's like a periodic, but you come in as you want. You're not obligated to come every time. Obviously, it's pretty much something like what you're doing. And I would just love to learn more and figure out how to incorporate that specifically more with the, help catalyze that in the Sanfilippo dad world. So,
Interesting, good idea. I can
mhm.
see that working somehow.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how at the moment
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly. I'm the same
I
way.
think
I'm
it's
like, I'm cool. I'm glad you think that way. Are you a soccer fan yourself?
yeah,
Football, I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, definitely. Yeah, that kind of that team thing. Yeah, and
yeah.
obviously as well, it's like my team, Brighton, community vibe that comes with being a Brighton fan. I'm sure other teams in the UK,
Mhm.
there's something about that feeling. And yeah, I know what you mean.
Well, cool. Well, let's both brainstorm about that. You never know where we could maybe together we put something together, but
Yeah.
we'll just
Oh,
keep the conversation going. And I
definitely.
want it to be an ongoing thing. And this is going to be a vehicle and a platform for you, however you want to use it. If you want to use it, lean into it as you want. This is kind of like just startup experiment in connecting dots and
Yeah,
being another resource. It'd be cool. Well, and it's a pay it forward aspect to it, which is essentially what you're doing and what I'm trying to do here. There's a lot of cool
yeah,
complementary stuff we have.
yeah. Totally agree with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah. Okay, you take care for now.
You too, man.
Yeah, be in contact soon.
Awesome.
Okay, cheers, Mike.
Thanks again. Bye-bye.